Welcome to the top 10 commanders of June. We have some bangers from Modern Horizons, the commander set, and I'll show you the best of them. So hope your coffee is warm, because we begin with Ulalek the Fused Atrocity. Want to know more about the lore of this guy? I have a video for that, but the popularity is logical. We love Eldrazi, and a new one has deep lore and a massive ability to copy all spells and most abilities that you can think of. And this is a 5-color commander. Those are always popular. The fact that this guy has been built 3,800 times, I think, is sort of a new record for new cards. But it is also logical, because the effect is just so big. Copying all spells you control, copying all abilities that you can think of, and choosing new targets for the copies is one thing, but you can pair it with an enchantment that is just 3 mana and 3 colorless mana, and it is Echoes of Eternity. It says, if a triggered ability of a colorless spell you control or another colorless permanent you control triggers, it triggers an additional time. And whenever you cast a colorless spell, you may copy it, and you may choose new targets for the copy. This guy fused with Ulalek the Fused Atrocity means that you get to copy the copy, and that is always a strong ability. Also, I think the flavor is just such a big win. Fusing 2 big titans together and making a new card out of it that is also just a big guy with sort of their fused abilities and making us think about what that does. It's a really smart move, I would say, and it makes me think as well about what the Eldrazi will be doing next in our world of Magic the Gathering. Next up is the Necrobloom, a really cool, flavorful card as well, and it's just a 4-mana commander with 3 colors, and who doesn't like that? The Necrobloom is a sort of landfall commander that says create a plant whenever land enters the battlefield, or if you control 7 lands with different names, create a 2/2 zombie instead. 7 or more, actually. I think the kicker of an ability comes in when it says land cards in your graveyard have dredge 2, which means you may return a land card instead of drawing a card, but you have to mill 2 cards. And that but really is a plus on such a card, because you love having cards in the graveyard in these colors. A card to pair well with it is Thalia and the Gidrock monster. Same colors, actually same mana cost. And it says you may play an additional land on each of your turns. We love that because we have a bunch of lands in our hand. And the last ability, whenever it attacks, sacrifice a creature or land. And we love sacrificing lands, because then we draw a card and we can choose to dredge 2 in order to get maybe that land card back into our hand, and we get to play it again and do all of our shenanigans with the zombies or the plants, whatever we want. The flavor here is that the Necrobloom has to start spreading its roots, spreading the plants around, getting to influence the forest that it lives in, and getting to suck up new people into its plantiness, and then creating new zombies around him when he has fed the ground enough. That is a beautiful story, I would say. Next up is a guy you really know. It's Nadu Winged Wisdom. If you have been watching any kind of Magic content lately, then you know Nadu the Winged Wisdom. It's a 3-mana bird. It is a flying 3-powered creature, which is usually already enough to sort of play it. But it also says creatures you control have, whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability, so you want to target your creatures, that's the kind of deck that you want to make, you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, put it onto the battlefield, otherwise into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn for each creature, meaning that if you get to make as many creatures as you want with all of the lands that you put onto the battlefield, you get to kind of go infinite really quickly. One card that works really well with this ability is Scoot Swarm. It's a 3-mana 1/1 that says landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, which Nadu does very often. Create a 1/1 insect, or if you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scourge Swarm instead, copying the ability to copy more Scourge Swarms onto the battlefield. With all of these creatures, you will get to play all of your lands out of your deck and probably draw all of your cards out of your deck as well. And I hope you win at that point. That's why this guy is in third. Next up is the Ur Dragon, a card that has been popular forever and will be popular forever as well. I think because these guys keep returning into our top 10s, that we should keep refreshing the content. This time we will be looking at the art of the Ur Dragon by Jamie Jones. The Ur Dragon really shows us what a dragon is all about. Big spikes, a huge guy, and things for scale. In this case we have dragons for scale. And we have actual scales, now that I think about it, because dragons have scales. The huge dragon really tells us all about the Ur Dragon, the avatar of all dragons that has brought all the dragons to all of the planes. In the background we see the Starry Night, we see probably the whole multiverse behind the Ur Dragon. And that is what he has behind him and in front of him as well, because the Ur Dragon has been bringing dragons all over the multiverse, and this also means that the Ur Dragon must have been able to travel the blind eternities. Maybe it was a planeswalker, maybe it just traveled through them like the Eldrazi do, maybe the blind eternities weren't as scary before, but I think this guy will manage in the blind eternities anyway. So that tells us a lot about the Ur Dragon. Thank you, Jamie Jones, for teaching us a little bit more about dragons and where they have come from. And I hope this makes it more fun to play the commander. We have 2 more evergreen popular commanders to come. But first, we have Zhulodok, the Void Gorger, another Eldrazi that is about a win more strategy. A 6-mana legendary creature that says, colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater, so basically Eldrazi, have Cascade, meaning you get to cascade twice, which means you get to exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land that costs less, and you may cast it without paying its mana cost. Meaning that you get to cast 2 smaller spells and probably win the game after this. I hope for you. One card that works really well with this guy, that is, by the way, very easy to remove for a 6-mana colorless commander, but Not of This World maybe makes that a little bit better. It's a 7-mana tribal instant that counters a spell. That targets a permanent you control, and you would say, that is not very good. But Zhulodok has 7 power, and Not of This World says this spell costs 7 less to cast if it targets a spell or ability that targets a creature you control with power 7 or greater. And we just care about the power 7, because this card protects our commander for free, and it costs 7 mana, usually, so you will get to cascade, and probably win the game, and keep your Zhulodok around for a little bit longer. Next up is another evergreen, as promised, Atraxa the Praetors voice, and as you can see, this commander has 4 colors except red. Why is that? Because Atraxa has been built by the Phyrexians, and the idea was from Elish Norn that Atraxa would combine all the powers of all the Praetors into one being to unify all of the Phyrexians. But of course the red one didn't comply, meaning Atraxa has all colors except red. Atraxa used to be an angel inspiring a bunch of Mirrans into battle so well that Elish Norn thought that Atraxa could do the same to the Phyrexians, which was almost true. More importantly, I think Victor Ana Minguez shows us how the Phyrexians think a little bit more. We see an angel, not really one when we would really see her in front of us, that would inspire hope in us, but maybe it does for the Phyrexians. We know she does. We see in the background, we see a bunch of dead forests. This is what the Phyrexians are about a little bit, but I think the most beautiful part is that Atraxa is sort of floating above the air and probably not using her wings to do this, but she is using her new tails to keep herself upright. I think she also can't really stand on those feet. I'm not really sure about that, but I think the Phyrexians just thought Atraxa was inspiring people the most when she was flying, so she should be up in the air all of the time. And that is how the Phyrexians think. Really practical and also really weird. Next up is my favorite cosplay character that I have seen up to this point. It's Pantlaza, the sun favorite, a dinosaur, yes. And when we look at the art, we see why it is so lovely to cosplay as Pantlaza, because it's just an inspiring chicken. And he has really nice hair as well. I love the fact that Huatli has been clothing this dinosaur, giving it robes to make it seem even more epic. And I think we haven't seen all that we should see from this legendary commander. Literally. Literally legendary commander. Because look at how inspiring this guy is to us. And now think about how inspiring this guy must be to other dinosaurs. We really haven't seen everything we could from this guy, because he has been getting into tunnels and caverns and hasn't been able to really lead the charge of a bunch of dinosaurs that well. I think we should see more of that, and I hope we will soon. Next up is, I think, the best commander Eldrazi-wise that has been released lately. It's Azlask, the Swelling Scourge, a 3-mana Eldrazi. It's an experience counter commander. It says whenever it or another colorless creature you control dies, you get an experience counter. This ability circumvents a real weakness from experience counter commanders, because usually experience counter commanders need to get that first few experience counters out and don't always get to do that because they really don't have much protection. But Azlask, when it dies, at least gives you 1 experience counter, so that's something. Its ability isn't really about the experience counters, really, which is a little bit weird, but it says for 5 mana, 1 of each color, creatures you control get +X, where X is the number of experience counters you have. So not really that great for an experience counter commander, I would say. But of course, giving your creatures, let's say, 6 extra power and toughness is really strong. For 5 mana, that's a great fire-breathing ability, but not really what you want yet. It also says science and spawns you control gain indestructible. Fun, but more importantly, Annihilator 1, meaning they get to destroy the board states of your opponents. What's most interesting here is the fact that Azlask is, for one, just a 3-mana commander with all 5 colors. That's a really cool thing here, because it's an easy commander to play and it lets you play all the 5 colors. What's more interesting to me is pairing it with all of the experience counter commanders that have been getting out. Not all of them are good with Azlask, but for example, Marin of Clan Nel Toth also works with creatures dying, giving you an experience counter every time a creature dies. And at the beginning of your end step, you choose a creature card and put it onto the battlefield, as long as that card's mana value is less than or equal to the number of experience counters you have. And with the combination of Marin and Azlask, you will very easily get all of the experience counters you need, get those Eldrazi from the graveyard onto the battlefield immediately, I would say, pretty easily, and win the game that way. I think this is the best Eldrazi commander because of it. Next up is Omo, the single queen of Vesuva. Single because it's one person that has been duplicated, and we know that she has been duplicated because of the helm she's wearing. And I think you know this helm, but let me know anyways. It's a 3-mana shapeshifter that makes other things shapeshifters, basically. It says whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, put an everything counter on up to 1 land and creature. Each land with an everything counter on it is every land type in addition to its other types, and each creature, non-land creature with an everything counter on it is every creature type. Meaning that everything basically is a shapeshifter. And there are a lot of fun things you can do with this, but one of the things that I have found is March from Fellis Vale, a 3-mana sorcery that you can flashback later, which says choose a non-basic land type. All of the lands with the counters on them have become those types as well, and they become a copy of target creature you control until end of turn and gain haste, meaning you get to target a big creature and then kill your opponents in one fell swoop. Speaking about one fell swoop, we have the Wise Mothman, which has been getting a little bit out of the top 10 almost. The last one, the 10th place, has been lowering 7 places, and now is the time to look at its wondrous art from Sergei. Here it comes. I hope you don't need to sleep. The Mothman is a big guy with really bright eyes. The flavor is that you get to walk on a pretty large hill and you get to see this guy in his little house. Usually the evil moths have different eye colors, but this one is purple, so it must be good, right? This one doesn't eat people, and it basically hasn't, but it has been brainwashing people into thinking they need to sacrifice people to the Mothman. But we don't know if he has actually eaten them, so we don't know really if this is a bad guy. But again, I hope you haven't slept, because I hope you don't need to sleep, because look at the nose of this guy, and then look at the moth in your room. That's obviously there. I really hope this hasn't done you any harm. But okay, have a nice day. I hope it's day.